The teddy bear actually gets its name from President Theodore Roosevelt, who's regarded by historians as one of the greatest presidents of all time. Now, that doesn't mean he's without fault. He's also regarded as one of the greatest presidents of all time because this was a crazy guy. Like, this is a guy who, at one point, got shot in the chest, coughed, noticed that there was no blood, said whatever, and then gave a 90-minute speech with an active bullet wound in his chest, saying, "It takes more than a bullet to kill a bull moose." Okay. He was a sickly kid, too. Like, he was a nerd growing up. He was raised with a silver spoon in his mouth. He was a Roosevelt. Like, think his cousin was FDR. Like, these are people who were wealthy and powerful, and he was considered a traitor to his class. So was his cousin, FDR, because he didn't subscribe to this idea that just because I grew up wealthy means, like, I need to side with these wealthy people. He was actually considered the trust buster. He became president in a way that nobody thought he would ever be president. He was a sickly, nerdy kid. He reeked of formaldehyde at college. Like, he was kind of a nerd. He reeked of formaldehyde because he, like, jarred reptiles and kept them in his dorm room. And he would eventually be elected to the New York State Assembly. His wife would pass away. He would go out west. He would go out to the Dakotas and, like, get this love of nature and also put on, like, 40 pounds and become, like, a horse rider who would later lead the Rough Riders, like, this military contingent that made him nationally famous. He also became famous by being the New York City police commissioner and, like, weeding out corruption. He would eventually become governor of New York. And then the party bosses, like, were like, this guy's not pro-business enough. Like, he's not doing what he's supposed to do. Let's make him vice president so he can't do anything. Vice president, they like made him William McKinley as vice presidential nominee, thinking like, this will send him out to pasture, like he'll do nothing. Well, then William McKinley gets assassinated, and suddenly the guy that big business said, oh, we want him nowhere near power, is the most powerful man in the country. And what he does with that power is not continue William McKinley's legacy. Instead, he becomes the trust buster, championing this idea of a square deal. He was like, I don't hate business, but they're not playing fair, and you've got to play fair. He established, like, the regulatory state for the first time. I mean, the president, this activist instead of this, like, passive pro-business observer. Like, people on the ground loved him. Like, he was immensely popular. He would sue, like, 44 different business trusts to, like, break them up. He would establish what would later become the FDA, like, the first, like, food safety rules because of these, like, meat packing institutions that were, like, nasty. He, like, a bunch of stuff. He would like make John D. Rockefeller a public enemy of him, and he would say like, he would like leak to the press that like, if you don't vote for this bill, then you must be in John D. Rockefeller's pocket. He's buying senators. And then no self-respecting senator could vote against what he was proposing. He would also bring in union leadership for this coal miner strike and the business leaders together to mediate for the first time as an impartial body. Normally it was just assumed the president or like the government was going to side with the big business, but he didn't. And in fact, if anything, he kind of sided with the union people because he brought them in and he made sure everything was meticulously, notes were taken about everything that was said. And when he was reading the transcript back, he was like, these union guys want to make a deal. These business guys are saying they're not even going to make a deal with the union at the table. That's not fair. He said, you must make a deal. And when they still didn't, he had the transcript overnight printed out into pamphlets that were easily readable, distributed them to the press, changed public opinion so that a deal had to get made that like expanded worker rights. But he wasn't perfect. That same zealous zeal that he brought to everything came with this like imperialist tendency in Panama and the war in the Philippines. He had this like backwards view of racial issues, particularly about indigenous people, like in civilizing other populations. He invited Booker T. Washington to dinner at the White House. Like that's positive, but then after the backlash, he never did it again. And he would even, like this Brownsville affair where these like 170 so black soldiers that were like discharged without trial. He would like make his mind up about something and then not change. He was very zealous about whatever he was doing and like really not backtracking. That caused him to do some good things. The regulatory state, busting up the trust. He was the founder of like conservation in this country. Hundreds of millions of acres that would become the National Park Service started here because he recognized that he was kind of the first president that viewed the earth as this like ecosystem that's all connected, worth protecting. And so these people who were rousing leaders, like he was the first celebrity president, people would hang on every word that he said because he was like this guy who's a big game hunter. He was like Rough Rider, rode horses. Like he got shot and like gave a speech. Like he wrote 44 books. He wrestled in the White House as like his exercise like once a week. Like he was a fascinating guy. People wanted to know what kind of pets his daughter had at the White House. So he's like a celebrity, not just the president. That was a change. He coined the term bully pulpit to like use the presidential office as this platform to speak directly to the people because like you can't, if you want to fight the guys in the cigar smoke filled rooms in the back, I'm gonna need the people to back me up, and they largely did. He would even run for president with a third party. That's where the bull moose term comes from. It was like a progressive third party, because his chosen successor, William Howard Taft, he didn't like what he was doing. He was like, you're not keeping up with my deal, and so his further platform was even more like radical and progressive, and he ran for office again. He got the highest percentage of a third party vote ever, but he couldn't win because they split the vote of people who would vote for that, and he was actually planning to run for president once more. But he went on this expedition to like the Amazon, to the jungle with his son, and he got so sick and he never fully recovered. And he died right before the next presidential election. So it's kind of like a what if. He probably would have been president again, and he probably would have done some even more radical things. But he didn't, and he leaves this legacy. All presidents' legacies from the past are mixed, but there are good things, there are bad things. The same zealous zeal that got him to like take on the big business made him kind of imperialist in other ways that we like look back upon less fondly. But historians still rank him in the top 5.